Was hat der Verstand, die Denke mit Erfolg, Gesundheit und Glück zu tun? Es gibt einen Mann, der ein absoluter Experte in Sachen Neurowissenschaft, Quantenphysik und Medizin ist. Seine Arbeiten sprechen für sich. Sein Name? Dr. Joe Dispenza. Er schrieb Bücher wie Du bist das Placebo, Werde übernatürlich oder Ein neues Ich. Doch er ist nicht nur Bestsellerautor und Theoretiker, sondern ein absoluter Praktiker, der seine für Laien anfangs scheinbar Theorien selbst unter Beweis stellt und das regelmäßig. Innerer Frieden, Selbstheilung, die Zukunft mit seinem Herzen und seinem Verstand kreieren, all das sind Themen, die er abdeckt. Letzte Woche besuchte ich ihn auf einer seiner 7-Tages-Meditationsworkshops und ich muss sagen, dieser war härter und herausfordernder als gedacht. Doch ich bin froh, ihn einfach durchgezogen zu haben. Und heute teile ich mit dir ein Interview, das ich mit ihm vor einiger Zeit vorher geführt habe. Mit den kommenden Bausteinen, die Joe Dispenza heute mit dir teilt, habe ich auch meine Zukunft, die ich heute lebe, kreiert. Sie waren ein Teil meines Erfolgs, also hör gut zu, denn die nächsten Minuten können für den einen oder für den anderen der entscheidende, fehlende Schlüssel zu seinem Erfolg sein. Ich weiß, für viele hat es vielleicht nichts mit Geld, mit Business oder mit Cashflow zu tun. Doch ich glaube daran, dass wahrer Erfolg aus einer inneren Substanz entsteht. Aus dem Grund wollte ich dieses Video niemanden hier vorenthalten. In der Infobox findest du eine PDF, die passend zum Interview für dich extra entworfen worden ist. Du kannst sie also jetzt kostenlos downloaden. Viel Spaß dabei. Und wenn dir dieses Video gefällt, dann Daumen hoch und like bitte dieses Video und vor allem abonniere diesen Channel für weiteren starken Content und schreibe mir in die Kommentare, welcher der Punkte dir am besten gefallen hat. Ich bin sehr gespannt. Willkommen bei Broke to Boss. Heute mit Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Joe, thank you for being here.
Happy to be with you.
So today, I definitely want to talk about something people ask me a lot. How do I create my future? And I want to throw something in with that, okay? Mm-hmm. So you kind of mix it and you take it from there. Mm-hmm. What does our body have to do with creating our future?
Well, your body is going to experience your future. That's what you have to take with you. I think most people think that it only requires a thought to create a future, and that's where it starts. But you have to combine the thought with the feeling. So if you think about it, thoughts are the language of the brain. It's the vocabulary of the brain, and feelings are the vocabulary, the language of the body. And how we think and how we feel creates a state of being. So most people's entire state of being, from the time they wake up in the morning, is typically in the past, the familiar past. Well, the brain is a record of the past. It's an artifact. So everything we've learned and experienced at this moment is wired in our brains. So people wake up in the morning, they start thinking about their problems. Those problems are memories that are etched in the brain that are connected to certain people and certain things at certain times and places. So the moment they wake up in the morning, they start thinking about their problems, they're thinking in the past. So if you believe your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, you're reaffirming your past.
What if I don't believe or I don't know that my thoughts have something to do with my future?
Well, then most people then live unconsciously reacting to their environment.
What does it mean?
Well, every person, everything, every place in your reality has a neurological network in your brain. So as you recognize familiar people, as you go to the same place, as you do certain things, your environment is actually controlling how you think and feel. So if you're thinking equal to your environment, you always create the same environment. So to change then, to truly change, is to think greater than the conditions in your life, to think greater than the circumstances in your world. So back to the idea of memories then. Every memory has a certain emotion that's attached to it.
Yes.
So if you start thinking about your problems, and those problems bring up fear, or they bring up anger, they bring up unhappiness, those familiar emotions then really begin to drive your thoughts. And if you can't think greater than how you feel, then you're thinking in the past even more. So the familiar past then begins to create the predictable future. So people get caught in these loops where nothing changes.
How does the familiar past create the familiar future? How does that
Well, look,
together?
I mean, we do this all the time. We're just unconscious to the process.
Yes.
I mean,
I'm talking about the people who might listen to it for the first time.
yeah.
And
But we do this all the time. Everybody does this on some level. You start your day and you run through a series of routine automatic behaviors that you did yesterday. So whatever you did yesterday, 90% of it is going to be what you do tomorrow. So then we can take your past and lift it up and set it on your tomorrow. So if you keep doing it over and over again, back to your original question, you condition your body to go on autopilot. So now the body's programmed into a predictable future based on what you did in the past. And in a sense, you've given up your free will to a program, and your body actually becomes the mind of your future, a familiar future.
And what happens to the body then? Because we were talking about the sickness and not having the power to really create and become something new. You were talking about because I went to the seminar and it was just amazing. And being able to predict, and that was the mind shifter, being able to predict your future, which you can based on your past and based on the feelings you have and based on the decisions you make. You actually help your body to get sick?
In a sense, what you're doing is everybody thinks that genes create disease, and that's actually a lie. And genes are like a library of potentials. It's the environment that signals the gene. But the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion. So most people that wake up in the morning, they start anticipating the feeling of every known experience.
True.
And if you can predict the feeling of every experience in your life, you're in the known. So then if you live by the same emotions, or you keep creating the same experiences that produce the same emotions, you signal the same genes every single day. So genes wear out like gears in a car, like taking a fax of a fax of a fax. You start breaking down your genetic expression.
Genes wear out. This is something which just kind of struck me. And quick question to that. So genes wear out. The good genes and the bad genes?
Well, there's no good or bad genes.
Thank you.
Genes are just expressing or making proteins. And the expression of proteins is the expression of life. So your body's a protein-producing machine. You know, your skin cells make collagen and elastin. Your muscle cells make actin and myosin. Your stomach cells make enzymes. Your immune system makes antibodies. And the expression of healthy proteins is the expression of life. Well, you keep hitting the same gene, keep signaling it over and over again, the gene is going to start to make a cheaper protein. And all aging, all breakdown is improper protein production. So then the question then is, if the environment signals the gene, and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, and people get caught in certain emotional states, and they're creating a genetic destiny, what happens when you change your emotional state? If you change your emotional state and you start feeling gratitude, as an example, or appreciation, or kindness, or care, those chemicals are different than the chemicals of suffering, pain, and unhappiness. So now what you do is you begin to suppress the genes that are connected to suffering, that make those proteins, and you start to activate or upregulate genes that are related to gratitude. And we've done the research.
So they're not they're not active as long as I've activated the other genes through the emotions I'm feeling?
So one gene is suppressed, the other gene is
So
activated.
they're not all at the same time active?
No, absolutely not. Genes are like Christmas tree lights. They're turning on and off all the time. So we did an experiment where we actually had people trade their limited, stressful survival emotions for elevated emotions like gratitude. 10 minutes a day for just a few days. Their immune system strengthened by 50%. That's a gene that was signaled.
So
you suppress the gene that makes cortisol, the stress hormone, just by changing your attitude. And then you activate the gene that strengthens your immune system, and all of a sudden, your immune system starts making the proteins that actually help your body defend itself against bacteria and viruses. So, in a sense, we're our own genetic engineers.
So profound. So that means at the end, you have more energy, you feel more alive, you're not aging as quick, sickness goes away because it doesn't have, right?
Yeah. So we have so many case histories of people with immune-mediated diseases, from rheumatoid arthritis to MS to lupus to food sensitivities to all kinds of cancers that are all immune-conditioned states, right? So if you're living by those other emotions like anger and fear and aggression and sadness and pain and guilt, those chemicals you're actually mobilizing all your body's resources to deal with a threat or a condition in your outer environment. And there's no energy in your inner environment for growth and repair. So the immune system becomes compromised. So when you switch that and you start creating elevated emotions, what happens is the body's natural defense system, natural resources say, hey, we have the energy for repair. And a person literally changes their personality and stays there. It's a good possibility that the disease goes away. We've seen it all over and over again.
So everybody who's listening, I want you to pause real quick because you have so much information, but think about yourself and think about what are actually the emotions I'm feeling on a day-to-day basis. So for example, to open it up a little bit, right? As an athlete, what are the negative emotions you feel? Even though I know you have no bad emotions, you're the best, and we all know that. But it might be scarcity. It might be the feeling of having no time, the feeling of feeling a lot of pressure. Those emotions, I can relate to that. We've been through that. But those emotions have an effect on your body and on your future. Isn't that right?
That's correct. In fact, it's the constant effect of those long-term emotional states that really begin to push the genetic buttons that do create disease. And So the problem is that we can turn on that reaction just by thinking about our problems, which means our thoughts could literally make us sick. So if your thoughts can make you sick, is it possible your thoughts can make you well? And the answer is yes.
Oh, wow. So we're talking about disease and we're talking about injuries?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, if you think about it, if you're reacting, let's just use the example of frustration. Let's just say you're addicted to frustration because those chemicals become very addictive. So then you look for reasons in your life to feel frustrated. And if those reasons change, you'll find other reasons. So it's not really...
Do you have an example?
Yeah, a person may say, oh my God, I hate this coworker of mine. She frustrates me because she sends all the wrong emails. I hate the traffic. It always frustrates me. But really, some people sit in traffic and are totally cool. Other people just constantly feel frustration. So if you keep that frustration going, you're secreting certain chemicals that literally cause you to want to run, fight, or hide. But if you're not running, if you're not fighting, and you're not hiding, but you're sitting in your car, what happens is that the adrenaline is liquid energy. But you're not
liquid energy.
It is.
Liquid energy. Write it down.
So then it's stored in the muscles, right? And if it's stored in the muscles, what happens to the muscles? They contract. And they keep contracting. You have neck pain, you have back pain, you have soreness, you have aching. And then all of a sudden you decide to run for the bus or run for an airplane or pick up your kid. And all of a sudden your body is contracted and all of a sudden you have an injury. But it wasn't the fact that you bent the wrong way. It's the fact that your body is restricted because of those chemicals.
Amazing. Amazing. So everybody who's listening, what we're talking about is ease. And if you're not in ease, you have disease, right? And it comes in multiple ways. And we always say a disease or an injury is a progression of something. And so when you think about that and going back, what Joe says is the thought is causing, right, the effect of becoming ill, disease, becoming not in ease. So, and it's not only being mad at the coworker, it might be being mad that certain goals or certain things not turning out the way you want to turn out, right?
Oh, it's always just being unhappy with yourself. And people become unhappy with themselves. They find reasons to torture other people so they can experience the unhappiness that they're experiencing. That's why we do it.
So what has all that to do with creating your future?
Well, I mean, if you want to create a new future, you got to do two things. You got to get clear on a vision.
Okay.
You got to sit down and say, what would it be like to be happy? What would it be like to be healthy?
Why?
Why?
Is it not just like random thinking? What has this to do with my future? For example, how do you, if you want to, because our topic is going from broke to boss, having the missing pieces to creating wealth, health, happiness, and a life you want to decide. So how's this connected with each other?
Look, I mean, it's really simple. People reach the point where they're broke. They reach their lowest point in their life. When you feel that altered, when you don't no longer feel like yourself, you're naturally going to start dreaming of a different reality. Your brain is wired to do that. So when you experience lack, when you experience emptiness, when you experience loss, you feel so bad. And you start looking around in your life and you see people driving nice cars, you see people happy and kissing on the street, you see people laughing, and you're wondering why you're not that way. Now, not everybody does this. Some people would rather be addicted to their misery the rest of their life and find people that are doing the same. And yeah, and they'll use each other to reaffirm their addiction to victimization. But a few people will say, there's got to be a better way. And those people start looking for different possibilities, right? So then when you start to answer the question, could I be wealthy? Could I be free? Could I be?
Okay.
Your brain switches on. And all of a sudden, you start thinking about a reality you want to live in. Your brain does this automatically. And so the lack that you're experiencing by seeing someone driving the sports car with a new wardrobe, your brain naturally goes, I want one of those. Or I want to dress like that. And all of a sudden, you see yourself in the car. You see yourself wearing the clothes. And the moment you do that, you're living in a new future reality in the present moment. Now, that's the thought. That's called intention. The forebrain turns on, blood flow makes it to the executive center. When you're emotional and when you're frustrated, it's going to the hindbrain, your animal brain. So now, the brain that's actually going to create another outcome switches on. But to the person who's doing this properly, they begin to feel the emotion of that experience before it happens. Their body, as their unconscious mind, begins to believe it's living in that future reality in the present moment. So they start feeling worthy, they start feeling abundant, they start feeling great, they start feeling inspired. And when you combine in clear intention with an elevated emotion, the stronger the emotion you feel from that moment, the more you're paying attention to the pictures in your mind. And in a sense, you're remembering your future. You're creating a long-term memory.
Remembering the future.
You're embossing the circuits in your brain for that future.
I like that. You're embossing?
Yeah.
I love it.
And you're emotionally conditioning your body into that future. Now, here's the key. You open your eyes and you look around and you say, my bank account is looking pretty scarce.
Yeah.
So then your senses fool you into believing that it hasn't happened yet. Well, the moment you do that, you're back to separation.
Yes.
The key then
is
to maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day, independent
Why?
of the conditions. Let me finish. Independent of the conditions in your environment. You got to be greater than your boss. You got to be greater than no food in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
You got to be greater than your bank account.
Yes.
You got to be greater than the emotions in your body that want to go back to frustration and lack.
Yeah.
And you got to do that for an extended period of time. So that means then you got to master yourself in the process. Think about it. If you're feeling the emotions all day long of abundance and worthiness, you're not looking for anything because you feel like you already have it. So then if you can sustain that for a period of time, all of a sudden you start to see these opportunities, these synchronicities, these coincidences that begin happening in your life. That's feedback from your life that you're making a difference. So then when you start seeing those doors start to open, you feel more of the emotion of wealth or abundance or excitement or inspiration, and you use that energy to create the next one. So then if you start doing that, you climb out. You just got to be able to be greater than your environment, to be greater than your body, and to be greater than time. And then when you do, I think people innately know how to do this. I think they know how to do it. I think they get so lost in the programs that they forget. So then people wait for a crisis or loss or disease or injury to finally change.
So we actually don't have to wait for the loss. We can do it anytime.
That's the old model. The new model is, I mean, people that feel that loss or the breakdown, they feel so bad that they could finally look at themselves and say, how have I been thinking? How have I been acting? How have I been speaking? How have I been feeling? And as you start looking at yourself through the eyes of someone else, you're no longer the program. You're the consciousness observing the program. Then you start saying, well, what thoughts do I want to believe in? What do I want to fire and wire
So
in
you're
my brain?
choosing what thoughts you want to believe in?
Absolutely. You're the
To
governor.
change your body,
You're
to-
the governor. You're the governor of those thoughts. You start thinking about how you're going to act in one day. You close your eyes and you start planning your actions. You mentally rehearse it. Now you're installing the neurological hardware in your brain ahead of the actual experience. Now, you're putting the circuits in place to be happy. Why? Because you're rehearsing it. And if you keep doing it, the hardware becomes a software program. And who knows, you just start acting happy. Then if you say, listen, I'm not going to get up today until I feel abundant, till I feel worthy, till I feel free. And then you teach your body emotionally what that feels like without having the experience. Most people wait for the experience to take away their lack. That's the old model of reality of quantum physics, of the Newtonian physics of cause and effect. The quantum is causing an effect. So the moment you start feeling worthy, the moment you feel abundance, you're generating wealth. So then you can do it from a lower denominator, or you can combine a clear intention with an elevated emotion and be in an elevated state and still see the old self from an elevated state instead of a limited state. So people try it out for a day or two or three, and then they get distracted. They got to watch their favorite television show. They got too tired. They got a headache.
They didn't see the results.
Yeah, and they give up. And it's the people who persist and become the scientists in their own life. They're experimenting to see, if I change my energy, does my life change? But not just for a moment. It would be like eating a great, organic, beautiful, whole breakfast.
Yeah.
Really enjoy it. Then spending the rest of the day eating junk food.
Yes.
That's what people do. They have their meditation, and they get out and they're just angry, and they're judging everybody. They lost it. They just disconnected from the energy of their future, and they're back to the energy of their past. And you can't put in 30 minutes into a meditation and then get up and not maintain that state.
Can you stop you just for a second? So this is actually the perfect answer because my generation is not believing in, believing is having a certain information without seeing it. So has a hard time believing that this actually works, because most of the time people who are speaking about it are meditating, talking about good thoughts, but then the rest of the time they're eating junk food and nothing changes. That's why, from a practical standpoint, you think, what, I can't just kumbaya the whole day and things and see nothing change. But the evidence helps you to create the future and believe again that this is possible. And that's why I really want to go back into your life, because you found it. Your job, what you do today, is not actually this what you wrote in the book. It's not actually what you were striving for, but it was something which found you, right? Because you had the situation when you were young. Can you elaborate and talk about this? What happened to yourself and how you got to this information?
Sure, I got run over by a truck in a triathlon, broke 6 vertebrae in my
Okay,
back.
so you too fast, because this is nothing just random. Can you say it again?
I was in a triathlon in Palm Springs, California.
How old were you?
I was 24 years old.
You were a therapist, right?
I was a chiropractor at the time, yeah. And I was on the biking portion of the race, and was making a turn, passing 2 cyclists, and there was a police officer going like this. He was waving me on. I was going past these 2 cyclists, but he had his back to the oncoming traffic. So when I turned and passed these 2 cyclists, a car, 4-wheel drive SUV, just clipped me from behind and just catapulted me out of my bike, and went over the handlebars and landed on my back, and I broke 6 vertebrae on my spine. I had bone fragments on my spinal cord. The neural arch of the 8th thoracic vertebrae was broken like a pretzel. I had cord compression. I was in trouble. And anyway, long story short, they wanted to do a radical surgery where they take off the back parts of my vertebrae. And
why?
Because the bone fragments in my cord were causing neurological problems. And if I tried to stand up or do anything, there was no structure to support my spine. So the spinal vertebrae are like columns, and when they compress those bone fragments. The volume compresses, the bone fragments go back on the cord. That's what creates the damage.
Wow.
So they want to screw in these stainless steel rods at the base of my neck to the base of my spine, and when they screw them in, it kind of cantilevers the spinal column off the cord. And that was their hope that it would help me. And
It was just the hope.
Yeah.
How did you feel back then?
Well, I mean, I had 4 opinions from 4 of the leading surgeons in Southern California, and I think if it was a patient of mine, I would have sent them for the surgery, but this was me, and it was a different game. So I decided not to have it, and it was really in the 80s that wasn't a common thing. I mean, they thought I had post-traumatic stress disorder, or that I hit my head or something. Anyway,
what would be the result everybody thought of if you not
they
doing
thought paralysis for sure.
paralysis?
Paralysis.
And that's what you thought of, right?
Well, I was having some trouble already. I mean, I was having neurological problems, and so they thought that that if I stood up or anything, it was going to get even worse. So I decided against the surgery, and I thought, well, hell, there's an intelligence that's given me life that knows how to heal me way better than me.
How did you get to that thought?
I don't know, I had this thought, like I kept hearing this thought in my head, the power that made the body, that heals the body. And I just thought, God, if I could connect to this intelligence and give it a plan, a template, a design, and then surrender my plan, like surrender the image to a greater mind.
So that's what you mean with the clear intention? Having a template, having...
So I had to be present with it. I had to be present. And it sounds really easy, but when you're in crisis, and you're laying there and you start reconstructing your vertebrae, the next thing you know, you're thinking about living in a wheelchair. Now you're focusing on...
And you're 24 years old.
Yeah, and you're at your prime. And so I kept catching myself focusing on what I don't want to have happen instead of what I do want to have happen. And that was 6 weeks of turning a battleship around. And it took a lot of work. It was really a dark night of the soul for me.
But at the beginning, it sounds just like positive thinking.
No, this was not positive thinking, because if I was thinking positively, I had to turn the fear and the anger and the frustration into something else. If I was positively thinking and I was feeling negative or angry, that thought would never make it past my brainstem, never make it to my body. So I went through a tremendous period of change, because the more frustrated I got, the less I could focus. And
which is normal usually, right? For people, of course, if you're about to be paralyzed, at least this the information in the field.
Yeah.
Who would not get paralyzed? So
anyway, I had nowhere to go. I had nothing to do. I was basically laying face down, and I went through this period where
Did you have pain?
I had a lot of pain. I had a lot of numbness, motor function problems. It was pretty traumatic, and I just said, okay, if this intelligence is real, then it's a consciousness. And if consciousness is awareness, and awareness is paying attention, it's got to be paying attention to me. But I got to reach for it. I got to make contact with it. It's already there. I got to go find it. So I learned how to be present, and I learned how to change my emotional state, and I learned how to focus.
But you were 24. What did you do and how?
I don't know. I had no other options. When I said I'm not having the surgery, I said, okay, I'm all in. And it wasn't pretty. It wasn't easy. I went through a real dark night of the soul because I couldn't get my mind to do what I wanted it to do.
Yes.
And then it would get me more frustrated, and then it would get even worse.
Yes.
But I persisted. I mean, it would take me 3 hours.
So you failed and then went back at it?
No,
or
I never stopped. So I would catch myself reconstructing my vertebrae. Like, the intelligence that is giving us life is always present with us. It's a presence, right? And it was me that wasn't present with it. So I'd start reconstructing, saying, take a look at this. And the next thing you know, I think, should I sell my home? Should I sell my practice?
Yes.
That was halfway through. Then I'd be like, oh, I lost my focus.
Then you start
all over again.
You started all over again? And
with my eyes closed.
Did you see yourself from the outside? Or how did you reconstruct and to give a template by feeling how it would feel like? Or
no, in the beginning I said, okay, let me show it what I want. So I studied the vertebrae, and then
you study it?
Yeah, but vertebrae by vertebrae, I've rebuilt them in my mind, and I had 6 of them to do, and I would get to like 2, and the next thing you know, I'd be thinking, oh my gosh, I'm never going to walk again. And then I would lose my focus. I'd start from the top one again, go down to the next one.
Did you start reading books about it?
Yeah,
so you had better clear picture?
I had anatomy books all around me. I can draw those vertebrae upside down with my left hand right now. And I'm wired for that. Anyway, It took me 6.5 weeks to go through the whole thing without losing my focus. And it usually took me about 3 hours to do, to get through it. And I was never satisfied. Like, I just wasn't satisfied. This one day I went through it, and I made it through without losing my attention the whole entire time. And it was like hitting a golf ball right in the sweet spot. I clicked. And I just knew in that moment something changed. And from that moment on, my pain levels dropped significantly. My numbness started to diminish. My motor function started to come back. I started to feel differently. And then that was it.
You kept doing it every day?
Dude, I did it twice a day some days, because it would be like, well, you're an athlete, it'd be like playing basketball, and you're practicing your free throws, and you can't make one. Now, you're not going to walk off the court. You're going to stay out there until you start hitting them again, right? It was kind of like that.
That's the attitude right there.
Yeah, because, I studied martial arts. At that time, I was a triathlete. I had a huge yoga studio, and I was disciplined. It just wasn't in my nature to quit, right? I had no other alternative.
That's the attitude.
So, persistence and determination, and then it got easy. And then what took me 3 hours to do, I was doing in no time at all, because I had the circuits in place, I had the focus. And then I started thinking, this was natural. I'd be thinking like, God, I would love to take a shower. Stand up in the shower and let that water hit my face. I'd never take it for granted again. And I would just close my eyes and be imaging myself in the shower. I don't know why I did this, but at some level, I was experiencing it fully, and I think my body was believing it was living in that reality, right? And then I would think, God, I just want to see a sunset on the beach again, and I want to eat lunch with my friends and sit at the table and just sit at the table. I want to use the toilet. I just ran through every scenario in my mind, and all of a sudden, everything accelerated. I was on my feet in 10.5 weeks. I was back.
Wow.
Yeah, it just all changed. It changed dramatically, and they wanted me to wear a body cast from my chin to my hips for a year. And I remember the day I woke up. I woke up. I knew it was the day I was going to walk. I knew it. I just woke up and I was like, I'm out of here. And I was staying at my friend's house, a beautiful house in San Diego. I just walked into his bedroom and tapped him on the head, and I said, David, I'm going home. He was like, what are you doing? I said, I'm going home today. And he just jumped out of bed. He freaked out. And he said, let's put that body cast on. So they put the body cast on me, and I looked at him. I said, there's no way. If I wear this, then I doubt what happened. I took it off, and then was back in my practice at 12 weeks. I was training again. And I just made this deal with myself that if I was ever able to walk again, I'd spend the rest of my life studying the mind-body connection and mind over matter. And that's what I've been doing since.
So this is wow. So for everybody, just sum it up, right? Where did it start? It started with the clear intention, that then connecting with the elevated thought, but the elevated thought comes through the elevated emotion. It comes from not letting yourself get distracted from other thoughts and being able to understand and give yourself time to always go back to your intention to really follow through, right?
Yeah, and it's not a glamorous journey.
So that's the beautiful thing. It's not glamorous. Yeah.
It wasn't glamorous. The outcome was, but I had a lot of sleepless nights. I had a lot of time on my hands. You're left with your own thoughts, and sooner or later you got to decide what thoughts you're going to believe in and what thoughts you're not going to believe in. And it's also very lonely. When you're in crisis or something like that seriously happens, you got to make a decision. I remember making the decision in the hospital. All my friends, doctors, therapists, everybody around my bed, they gave me that. Yeah. We know you're going to make the right choice. You know what that means? Yeah. It means I'm so glad I'm not you.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I looked at their discomfort in their eyes, and they filed out of the room to return back to their lives, and I thought, this is just about me. This is the end. And then when I was back on my feet, I was a changed person. I wasn't the same guy any longer. I was initiated, and I couldn't relate with my friends any longer because, if I duffed a golf shot, you think I'm going to get angry? I was walking. I was super happy. I wanted to know from that point on how this all happened. I had to go back and look into texts and the latest research, and it wasn't coming from conventional science. It was coming from neuroplasticity and epigenetics and quantum physics and psychoneuroimmunology. And what happened? How did my bones reconstruct? I mean, how the hell did that happen? And so that I just sold everything. And I moved to the Northwest, and I retreated from my life, and I wanted to answer those questions. I really wanted to answer those questions. And then I started studying people that had spontaneous remissions from diseases. And I went to 17 different countries and interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people that were treating conventionally or unconventionally, and they were staying the same or getting worse, and all of a sudden they got better. And I wanted to find the commonalities, and it wasn't diet, and it wasn't celibacy, and it wasn't doing the right thing. It was the mind. And so that forced me to go back to school and study neuroscience and try to piece together this model. And then I thought, now that I found the commonalities, now I understand what they did, the 4 common things, then can I teach it? Which means let's reproduce the science to see anything that's reproducible is science. Yes. So then let's get people to do it. And so fast forward to today, our community of students, our community of people that are in this work are healing themselves of stage 4 cancer. That's not 1, that's not 2, that's not 3, that's not 4, that's a lot of people. We have people healing themselves of Hashimoto's syndrome, of rare genetic disorders that medical science has no solution for, from type 2 diabetes, from peripheral neuropathy, from all kinds of things, Parkinson's disease, traumatic brain injuries, anxiety, depression. I mean, they're not relying on anything outside of them to do that. They realize that they could self-regulate and make those changes. And I'm hoping that one day that'll become the new normal.
Yeah. Man, so the last 2 things before we head out is just, first of all, I thank you so much. Thank you for your story. Thank you for the teaching. It is because we're working on, you know what, is going to become the new normal. So to connect those things, yesterday you said something which what people sometimes miss, and I miss so many times, is, you know what, on the days really bad things happen, you just said it on the side, you said, that was probably the day you forgot or you missed to take your time to create the future. Meaning, you can actually create the future if you take your time in the morning or the day before to give the day a model, right?
Something to invest your attention and energy in. Because if you don't, you're going to be predictable in your life. And predictability means everything stays the same. And in people that are afraid of stepping out of the known into the unknown actually crave the predictable. That's why they get stuck in routine. That's why they're stuck in the mundane. Separating the sacred from the mundane is doing the work. It's being in the creative process. So people have all these things that happen to them in their life that they consider bad, and they say, I didn't create that. And I say, you created that by not creating. You're left to the randomness of reality. Reality's happening to you. You're a victim. On some level. And if a victim is somebody who says, I'm this way because of that person or that thing.
Of the situation.
That situation is actually controlling how I think and feel. Well, if that situation is influencing how you think and feel, then on some level you're a victim to that condition. But how you think and feel actually creates your reality. So you're reaffirming the same reality. So having the time in your life to just close your eyes and disconnecting from your environment, from all the people and things and places that you typically go to, sitting your body down and not having it be on a program and getting up and rushing to the next thing, getting in the present moment, that it takes an act of will to change the way you think and feel, so that when you open your eyes, you're in a different state than you normally are in your routine life. And then stay there, stay in that state of being as an experiment. And you have
see it as a training.
Exactly. And everybody has 1,000 reasons to be angry, 1,000 reasons to be unhappy every day. That's normal. That's natural. But if you're going to be supernatural then you got to actually be greater than that. And you got to say, no person, no thing, nothing's going to stand in the way between me and my vision. That doesn't mean you elbow everybody out of the way. In fact, you do the opposite. You understand that when you're in that state of being, you're calling experiences to you. Now you're the magnet. So where are you rushing to? You can't rush anywhere if you're in that state, because you know that you're drawing it to you. Now, so then the question is, how would you live your life if you knew your future was coming to you, if you were in that state? You would be more kind, you'd be more present, you'd be more giving, you'd be more loving, you would be more considerate, you would be more joyful, and you wouldn't be rushing to your death, because you're the center of it all. Not in a selfish way, but in a way of knowingness.
And you wouldn't hide, there would be no flight, and there would be no fight.
And you wouldn't have to.
And
why would you give up the feeling for that? You may do it a few times in the beginning and you lose the magic, and then you're like, God, I like that feeling much better. You get back, and then the person, whoever it is that pushes your buttons, you see a part of yourself that you used to be that you no longer are. And that's called compassion. You say, wow, I used to be that. God, I love that person. I hope they wake up one day. That's the journey. And you're more kind to them because you understand that you used to have those same things.
The last ingredient to creating the future is also being able and kind of accepting and hoping even for the unpredictable future, right?
Yeah.
That you give it a model.
Yeah,
but
I
you were
don't
talking
like
about
to use the word hope. I mean, hope is a beggar.
Okay, that's good.
Yes.
That's very good. I always used to say that, remember?
I mean, I wouldn't
You
say
saying
that. I would say then you have to stay in the unknown, right?
So what does it mean?
That means then the moment you start making different choices and you do different things, that discomfort or that uncertainty you feel, most people rush back to the familiar. So
Yeah.
you have to be open in that state where you're so busy being it.
What does open mean in the state?
Well, that means then you're not trying to predict how it's going to happen or when. It's actually none of your business.
Isn't this what you did with modeling, like with reconstruction?
but you were talking about creating, okay?
Okay.
So let's say you want a new job or a new career, a new opportunity, and
Okay,
every day
yes.
you're investing your attention and energy into that future.
Yes.
If you do that properly, your body's going to start following your mind to that destiny. You got to keep your attention there, right? But people say, well, it should happen this way or it should happen that way. They start expecting it happening a certain way. Well, that's the known. If you're trying to predict it, you're back in the known. The uncertainty, the unpredictable, is just being open to however it's going to happen. In fact, you shouldn't be thinking about how it would happen or when it happens. When you do that, you make room for the unknown. The moment you start thinking about how it should happen, you're laying a known on an unknown, and you're back to Newtonian physics. So that's not hoping. That's just being open to the fact that, my goodness, it's going to happen. And how would you act if you knew it was going to happen? You'd be joyful. You'd be more relaxed. And it takes laying down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want for something greater to happen. And that's not an easy thing.
And you said it yesterday. Somebody coming to you and say, you won't believe what happened. And he said, I was trying to think how it happened. You said, hey, the moment you understand how it happened, you lost the creative power.
Right. The moment you know how it's going to happen, you're back in the known. And the cool part is that when it comes in a way that you haven't thought of, you're going to scratch your head and you're going to know you have a connection to some greater resource. And you're going to be like, wow, I'm so humbled because that's a big mind. Like you're in the little small labyrinth of life, and there's so many doors to a bigger labyrinth, and you can't find the door out, but it already knows the door out. So you better say, hey, I'm open, just show me. And when you're humble enough to say, I've done the work, I've created, I'm open to the possibility, and you just stay in that, you got room, right? The moment you start predicting, you're closing doors. You're back to the familiar. Right?
And if you have more room, you have more time, right?
Time and space become more available,
It's so wonderful. Thank you so much. We way over that time already. But we have enough time. Looking forward for our next meeting. It is a joy. You heard how to create the future. Number one, it starts with your mind. Number two, with the clear intention, having that attitude that you give yourself room, that you give yourself the allowance to create. Once you create, number three, you open you're open to new possibilities you haven't even thought of. And once you have it, once you see it, you appreciate it, and you keep at it. You gotta keep at it, because the future is created right now. And why missing the future if the moment is already here? So this is Dr. Joe Dispenza, and that is Karoma. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your time. Let's create the future right now. Thank you. See you later.